So we have seen companies like Wish.com that they start like little tiny, and now they are one of the biggest e-commerce in the world. And the reason is because they were executing locally, but they were expanding themselves globally within the local execution.
David, thank you very much for being with us today.
Welcome. Yes, I'm happy to be here with you and talking about my experience.
Thank you so much. So it's a perfect keyword. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. And could you actually tell us a little bit more about your professional career, your professional experience, and the steps that have led to your current position as the Global Product Marketing Director at Facebook?
Sure. I mean, just to let you know, the actual role that I'm doing in Facebook is focusing on the ad part of the business. So there are different kind of product marketing directors here, but in this case, my focus is to grow the advertising business of the company. And the way I've been joining Facebook has been probably done through 3 different steps. No, the first one has been on my movement from a system engineer into the business world. And by the way, this is thank you to the IE. When I ran my executive MBA, that really opened me a world of opportunities. The second part of my career has been on moving from being customer person. I mean, it's like I was working in the telco space, so I was working in companies like Telefonica and Orange, and the providers came to me to offer their services and solutions, and the only thing that I have to do was choosing. And I moved to the provider side, which is more complicated. Obviously, you have to sell, you have to open the business, you have to be more creative, and you have to influence a lot. And the third has been moving from a local role in a local market, and it was starting in Madrid and then to Spain to a much more European and much more global role. No? And that's when I started working for companies like Microsoft or Huawei, and then moving to Dolby or to Facebook, now where I've been doing more global. So at the end, I think that this has been a long journey. In some of the cases, I was able just to go up in the ladder, but sometimes I have to move laterally in order just to reach the goals that I want to achieve for myself now. So there's something that we do at Facebook that I think is very interesting, but I did for myself before. I didn't know that was named this, which is called vision writing, which is trying just to organize your thinking, saying, okay, what are the things that I really like to do? And what could be the ways that I could be able just to achieve? And just to let you know, for example, when I decided that I want to work for Facebook was 8 years before I joined Facebook. So it took me a while to get into a global organization. It was, in this case, Microsoft, Huawei. And then from there, I moved to the US with Dolby Labs. And because I was in Dolby Labs and I was in the US, I was able just to join into Facebook. But that was the vision that I write for me. So it's something that really worked for me, and it's been a really good experience.
So clearly, I think vision is the right word, right? I mean, especially if you work on this so strategically over such a long time period. So we spoke a little bit about what has happened or what led you to your current position. Let's talk a bit about your current role, your current function. What are some of the projects you're working on today? And with the pandemic all around us, how would you say they have evolved? Has the crisis opened maybe some unexpected opportunities for you?
Yeah, I would say not for me, but for every company in the world. No, and I think that this is a very interesting time. And when you talk about opportunities, probably it's something that we knew it was going to happen, but the question is like this crisis has accelerated everything. And what has accelerated is being the interest of companies to drive their digital transformation. So Facebook is a company, and what I mean Facebook is Instagram and WhatsApp and all the messaging solutions that we have. Facebook has been extremely successful with digital native companies like e-commerce, like gaming companies, very, very innovative companies that they decide to go into the online world before any other. And particularly travel, which unfortunately right now the situation with travel is not that great, although still is doing well in the platform because the online business is still working well. But what we have seen is like in the big side of the business, the big enterprises, for example, big telcos or big retailers, that now they are having challenges in their real physical world. We call it offline. They need to accelerate their transformation into online. And we are seeing a huge movement in that direction. And by the way, I will not name it only purely online. I think that right now what we are talking about is the concept of omnichannel. So this is one of the things that we have seen. And the other area that has been really, really interesting has been on the small and medium business. So Facebook is a huge platform to promote your products and to promote new businesses, particularly for small and medium business. Has been always like that. But now we have seen that there are many other small and medium businesses that they were not using online, they were not already using online tools, that they have accelerated the usage of those ones. And this has been complemented with two things that are really, really interesting. If you think about digital marketing, in reality, digital marketing is not only the typical brand marketing that we used to do. Digital marketing really drives business outcomes and business results. So you think about that, and that was something that we were thinking before the crisis, and it's like, normally there are not that many companies that they have a really good website, for example, or there are many markets like in Latin America or in Southeast Asia where companies, I mean, it's like the consumers, they don't even have a computer. So you have only a mobile phone. So we found a way that by building new products like Marketplace or Facebook shops, we should be able just to help to accelerate the connection between digital marketing and the moment of purchase for consumers or for your customers. So shops, commerce has been one of the big trends that we are seeing. And that's why, for example, companies like WooCommerce or Shopify are growing and they're accelerating a lot. And the other thing that we are seeing that is very interesting is on the customer relationship part. And particularly if you are in e-commerce or you are in an online business, when you sell a product, what you want to do is not only sell the product, it's keeping sure that the consumer comes back again to your business and they buy a new product again. Or you are in the subscription business, you want to drive retention. So it's more important than ever before that you drive customer care, that you drive conversational commerce. And we are seeing a huge evolution as well of business messaging in this particular regard on how you're going to connect with consumers. It's something that we call the business to people communication.
So let me pick up a little bit on the connecting, right, with consumers. As you know, from your experience, IE Business School is very much about the entrepreneurial mindset. So from your point of view, how do you think can entrepreneurs take advantage of the Facebook ecosystem, such as Instagram, WhatsApp, and so forth, in order to scale and reach potentially new clients?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I mean, you have to think that Facebook as a whole, I mean, with Instagram, with WhatsApp, it's a platform that covers more than 2.9 billion people. So we have seen companies like Wish.com that they start like little tiny, and now they are one of the biggest e-commerce in the world. And the reason is because they were executing locally, but they were expanding themselves globally within the local execution. So it's proven to be very successful. This is what we call the cross-business planning or campaigns, where at the end it's like you can run locally, but you can execute globally. And this is something that is working really well. And there are many tools that you can use. I mean, it's like, as I mentioned, you can use your brand marketing, because at the end you want to be able to be discovered and your products have to be discovered. And Facebook is a very strong platform for that. And I mean, once your product is well known, I think that whatever you have to do with Facebook has to be complemented with other platforms. But when your product is totally new, it's a really great way to be discovered. But then, as I mentioned before, it's like you think about the jobs to be done that you need to do as a business. One of them is like make your products and your business be discovered, but then sell and then manage the relationships with your customers. This is what I call the customer journey. So there are different tools right now in social media and the social networks that you can use for those regards. As I mentioned before, it's like one is the digital marketing itself for brand and what we call the performance marketing. The other one is the commerce opportunities and platforms that you have, like Marketplace or Facebook shops or eventually something that is becoming very, very, very active in markets where are purely mobile and markets that they are very heavy users of WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or Instagram messaging, which is conversational commerce. And then obviously on the customer relationships, for example, using the messaging apps in order just to drive customer care or to drive any other type of connections with people, doing retargeting or driving subscriptions, upselling, cross-selling, all those things. So at the end, you have to connect all these different things as a business. And today, there are tools that will allow you to do so. And by the way, this is not only applicable for small and medium businesses, it can be applicable as well for big enterprises.
So I know that you also work with and advise startups in the field of software as a service, or sometimes called SaaS, right? And there's right now a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, migration to platform as a service, platform unbundling, micro SaaS. What will you tell an entrepreneur about the current challenges facing them with SaaS?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that always we tell to software as a service companies that I think are interested to share today here. One is you are in the business of driving retention and the driving loyalty, I would say, no? Because I mean, you think on a software as a service, this is a subscription-based service. Think on a telco. I mean, it's like while your primary goal is going to be to acquire customers, at the end, you have to retain them. And I remember there is a really great research from McKinsey that it tells that from the moment that your customer, they see your product, to the moment that they become a loyal customer and they really use your product and you drive lifetime value, which I think is the right word to use here, it takes, I mean, it's like there is a drop of 92 to 94%. So that means that at the end is like you will keep only 6 to 8% of the people that have seen already your products and they have shown interest in your products. Anyway. So I think that in that sense, you have to focus not only on your product, you have to focus on your customers. So things like customer success, like customer experience, like customer support, service level agreements, or even enterprise mindset. Those are things that you have to consider for your business because at the end, you have to drive this lifetime value. So this is one of the things that we are seeing constantly now. It's like, do not focus on your product. It can be a fantastic product, but if you don't really drive engagement and loyalty and retention with your customers, that is not going to fly. I mean, eventually in the short term, but not in the long term. And the second thing that we tell is like, well, it depends on, you have to segment your customer because you are trying to sell your products and solutions for a big enterprise. I mean, the sales cycle, the type of sales and roles and responsibilities is going to be very different if you want to drive your service for a small and medium business at a scale. So in the first case, you will have to have a direct sales force. In the second case, which is small and medium business, probably you can even try to automate and to drive online or eventually use indirect channels. And the same applies for the type of customer care and the customer experience. When I mean customer experience, I mean the customer success now. And the reason why I'm talking about customer success is because probably one of the biggest companies that you know in this world, which is Salesforce, they've been able to be so successful because they implement this function, which is like, hey, once you start using my service, let me put somebody that will understand your business to help you use the platform and to help you understand how to maximize the value that brings to your business. So then it will drive retention and it will drive usage and it will bring more people to use the platform.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more about the importance of loyalty and retention. I still remember a couple of years ago actually doing some research around that. So I can only second that. Let me now go a little bit to social media in general. We obviously hear a lot about new social media tools, merging communication platforms or other hot topics. What would you say, from your point of view, are the top 3 tech trends to keep an eye on, and why do you think we should keep an eye on that?
Okay. I will not talk too much about AI and 5G because, you know, it's on the hype of everybody. I think that those are the ones everybody knows. The only thing that I will mention around AI before I talk about my 3 topics is right now there's a big trend around managing AI bias. So, and the reason why I mean about this is because there are a lot of cultural implications of the people that can eventually program AI that can lead into wrong responses on an AI system. So be aware of that, which is very important. It's becoming a trend. So I would say three things that are relevant for me. One is, as I mentioned before, business messaging. And the reason is because there are many markets in the world that they use only messaging. And we are seeing a huge acceleration of business messaging in markets like Thailand or Vietnam or eventually Brazil, where this is becoming very relevant, but not limited to. We're seeing the same thing in the US as well as in Europe. The second is commerce. And as I mean before, is this concept of Shopify's in the world, the WooCommerce or Facebook shops or Google Shopping. I mean, they're going to be there to stay and to help particularly small and medium business to be more successful. And the third one, I think this is a very interesting one. I don't know if you have the chance to read, a company which is called Twilio. They just acquired a company called Segment. So Segment is something that is called the customer data platform. So what I want to mention is like this is a huge trend of new companies where their main goal is to start collecting data. I would not say, obviously taking into account all the privacy things and privacy issues and regulations, they're starting to collect data that they're going to put to serve to the purpose of different businesses. And this is what Segment is doing. And we're seeing a lot of trend there. So those are the three ones. And the something else that I would like to say is the other thing that I'm seeing is a polarization of the tech world between China and the Western world. I would say like China, they're going to start building their own chipsets because there is no way that companies like Huawei can survive. And I work for Huawei, so I know exactly what they can think about. And at one moment in time, they're going to bring their own technology, totally independent from the US, and that's going to happen with their own software and everything. So we will see a polarization. I don't know exactly what is going to be the outcome, but China has a huge influence in markets like Africa or in like Latin America or Southeast Asia. So, and eventually some markets in Europe too. So we'll see.
So to be honest, this is the perfect segue to my next question, because you already spoke a little bit about the global forces. And one of our objectives at IE Business School is to obviously prepare our students to work in global markets and having a global vision. So with your experience, can you tell me a bit more about your experience of running global businesses?
Yeah, by the way, this is the part I like the most, be a global person. And this is what I wrote in my vision. So, and that's why I ended here. So yes, I think that this obviously the typical responses that you will say, which is like, you have to know very well the markets you're gonna enter in. You need to understand the macroeconomic dynamics as well, the micro, and then obviously understand exactly what are going to be your customers or where you're going to be, what is your industry, and what are the competitive dynamics. And you have to know about that, obviously, because that is going to give you a sense of what is your opportunity. But for me, what's more important, and I think that that's one of the things that enlightened me when I was working in a global companies, and particularly that happened to me when I was working in Huawei, is a culture. At the end, you gotta do business with people. And it's like the way that you can think about the world can be totally different the way that a Chinese or an Indian person can think about the world. So while in the industry and the products that you have, they can be extremely good, if you don't build that human connection with the people you're going to do business with, you're not going to be successful. That has happened to big companies like IBM when they build factories in Vietnam and they build factories in other parts of the world. Some of the factories were successful, others were a total disaster, and the operational model was exactly the same. Here is exactly the same. At the end, it's like you're going to be working with people where I give you an example. The Chinese people are very, very collective, and the American people are very individual. So Chinese people make decisions in groups, and the American people, they make decisions individually. So if an American expects that a Chinese is going to make a decision, that is not going to happen. It's like you have to be connected with the group. You have to create personal connections before you want to start a business with the Chinese. And that is going to apply to you in every part of the world. And the last piece that I think is going to be important in this part of work is when you're going to plan a global deployment and global work, you have to prioritize. This is a big lesson. And it's like, you cannot tell, and I'm going to do business in Latin America. It's like, you have to prioritize which markets in Latin America you're going to start first. Is Brazil or Mexico because they drive the most of the volume? Or it has to be Argentina or Peru because they have a huge acceleration on technology, and Brazil, for example, is much more controlled by the government, and you're gonna sell like consumer electronics products. I mean, you either produce there in the market, or you're not gonna be able just to sell the product actively there. So you better know well which are gonna be your priorities based on the information that I mentioned before.
So thank you so much for your perspective on running a global business. Let me come to my last question. If you would have to share any particular lesson that you have learned throughout your extensive career, which one would it be, and could you share it with our business school community?
Sure. I would say that there are two parts of this question that I would like to respond. One is from a professional perspective, I would say. So I think that one of the things that I've learned, particularly has been very interesting in my experience when I came to the US, was you need to be a really good communicator. And why this is important, because sometimes you may have great ideas, but at the end you have to work with people and they have to buy in your projects and your solutions. So you better do a really good job there. And particularly this is really, really important in the Silicon Valley. I mean, I learned this probably in the hard way. I didn't have any problem when I was working in Europe, but when I came into the US, I have to improve my communication a lot. And I'm still working on that, by the way. And with communication comes listening too. So I think that you combine really good communication with really good listening, you can do a good job. And at the end, the third element is taking care of the people you work with, your people in your team and the people that you work with, because at the end, the goal is to look in always for a win-win. So I would not mention politicians that are here right now in the US that I don't think are looking for the same thing, but clearly it has to be a win-win, and you have to care about people. The people will follow you if they know clearly that you care for them. So that is from a professional perspective, and I think from a personal is be curious. So be open. I mean, it's like don't think that probably the things that happen in the world are going to happen in the place that you are today. I mean, like, be open that you may have to move to look for new opportunities. You may have to look for learning something new. I mean, I'm probably sure that all the community on IE is very curious. And I don't think that should be something that it should be very applicable to them. But anyhow, I mean, like, be curious and be open, because that is going to open you a lot of opportunities. So I think that's what probably brought me here.
David, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your professional, but also for your personal insights. It was clearly a treat. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome, and very nice to talking to you.